Hello and welcome to this episode of Classroom. There's been so much interest in the primary market, but it's been all focused on one space, power. It's a very, very complex sector, but there is a huge amount of paper that's hitting the market. So in case you're interested in those IPOs and you want to understand the business better, here's two gentlemen to help you through it. Both understand and track the space very carefully indeed. Adi engineer, name that and a face that doesn't need any introduction for the world of power, and Deven Choksi, who tracks some of these stocks as well. Gentlemen, great to have you on the show. Mr. Engineer, let me start with you and lay down the foundation as it might be. How would you define a power utility company for someone who's trying to understand what the business is about?
A power utility company ideally should be one which is not just concentrated on one aspect of power, not just generation or transmission or distribution. Ideally, it should be a company that has a play across the full value chain of power, or at least certain major segments of the chain of power. And that's what one would really look for, because it's all ultimately an integrated play between generation, distribution and transmission. And you need to see a company that has got its investments in more than just one segment of the power game.
The interest right now, Mr. Engineer, seems to be highest in the power generation companies for various reasons, what the Power Minister has said about the sector and the kind of primary market offerings there are. For a generation company then, what is at the core of its business?
For a generation company, you can start with the credentials of the sponsors. There are many people who think power is a very profitable business, but it needs, like most other sectors, an in-depth experience of the sector. So you start with companies which have some track record or proven experience in power, or have got together a nucleus of experts in power to be launching the business. Then you come to the fact that all power plants, and we are focusing on generation in this discussion right now, are basically plants that convert heat energy into electrical energy, and that brings us to the linkage of fuel. So you come to the fact that the power company should have a strong linkage with its source of fuel. That's the next thing that one would look for. And the third thing one would look for is the technology it's adopting in its EPC, in the plant and equipment that it's putting up to generate power. That's the third aspect that one would look at. And the fourth one, I must say, is the commercial model of that power company. What is the customer base of that power company? Has it got a mix of both long-term contracts as well as merchant power? And that would determine the long-term commercial viability of that company. There are many complex aspects, but I would sum them up into some of these as the most important aspects.
There is also a definition, you would say, Mr. Engineer, based on where the asset is at that point, between the ones that are up and running and those that have to be commissioned. In that, would you draw a line in the sand between the two?
Of course, because you have the project risk as a very major risk. And these days, you see, land is a very big issue. So one would look at the status of the project. You can say the various milestones of the project. And have they got possession of the land? Have they signed up the fuel contracts? Have they signed up the EPC contracts? How are they heading for financial closure? What is the actual state of readiness of that power company to embark on the business that it is proposing to get into? And an evaluation of these factors would be very necessary for an investor in selecting the power company.